Hello, everybody. It's Phil Lee with a new episode of Civil War Chat, and today is Martin Luther King Day on 2021. Today's topic is going to be about abandon Ben Shapiro. Before I get started on that, let me remind you that up in the upper right, if you click on that notification bell, you'll be notified when I have a new episode for you to watch. So it'll automatically happen if you just click the notification bell. So let me pull up my notes and get started with my broadcast here of why I urge people to abandon Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a co-founder of the Daily Wire, where he has been a political commentator since 2015, when I first started watching his show. Sometime during the last 5 years, he responded to an audience question about the Confederate Battle Flag by remarking that, this is paraphrasing, but it's pretty close to what he said, quote, "Some of the American tanks that freed prisoners at the Nazi concentration camps flew that flag," close quote. So he was defending Confederate memory at that point. That's sometime within the last few years. But since then, he has at best acquiesced to the destruction of Confederate statues and even the demonization of anything concerning Confederate memory. He has not stepped 1 foot in the direction of supporting the viewpoint that he expressed earlier about the Confederate battle flag being on the tanks that arrived at Auschwitz and other places like that. Some of his Daily Wire colleagues have been more supportive. During the past year, I vividly recall Michael Knowles said, and I can't get the exact words, but he said he opposed the destruction and vandalization of Confederate monuments, as I recall, principally because he felt that tradition needed to be respected. Now, he's Italian, he's much more concerned with the Columbus statue and that sort of thing, but he did say that in defense of Confederate statues. He said, "I don't want to see it," and he's a New Yorker. Similarly, Andrew Klavan also explained that Southern Secession was at least partly about resisting the steadily increasing centralization of power in Washington, not simply all about slavery. Now, he's been less vocal than Michael Knowles about that, but still, he seems to realize that it wasn't the Confederates seceded not strictly over slavery. There were other things involved. They certainly didn't go to the battlefield to perpetuate slavery. They went to the battlefield to defend their invaded homeland. Even though, this is what annoys me, even though Ben has been greeted warmly during his Southern college campus tours, he's been greeted warmly and enthusiastically. Today, Martin Luther King Day, 2021, he threw Confederate memory under the bus again. He quoted a Washington Post article written by 2 academic historians who opined that those who temporarily occupied the Capitol building earlier this month must be held accountable. They further explained that failure to do so would be like repeating the mistake of failing to hold ex-Confederates, quote, accountable after the surrender at Appomattox. That failure in the surrender terms, they argue, led to the formation of racist governments and anti-Black terrorism across the South. Shapiro made no defense of the Appomattox surrender terms, none, leaving it to be inferred that he feels that the South merited the current academic interpretation that it was America's evil twin, and they had to be brought to heel by the radical Republicans with the 14th Amendment. Shapiro even fails to mention that the Southern state governments ruled by ex-Confederates before the 14th Amendment. These were ex-Confederates ruling those states. They cast the deciding votes to ratify the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery only 9 months after Appomattox, before the radical Republicans formed their vassal puppet regimes in the South. Southern whites generally opposed the 14th Amendment because it basically would not permit any former Confederate state to rejoin the Union unless the applicable state had a radical Republican state government. That's the short of it. There are a bunch of words, other crap, but it all boiled down to that. You're not getting back into the Union until we have a vassal regime controlling your state that we know will vote reliably Republican. That's what it was all about. This was accomplished by denying voting privileges to many ex-Confederates and mandating universal black suffrage in the former Confederate states, where 40% of the population was black. Mandating universal black suffrage in the former Confederate states, but not in any of the northern states where voter qualifications remained a state's right. Inconsistency much? Again, if your state was north of the Ohio River or Mason-Dixon line, you didn't have to worry about the Congress or the federal government telling you what you are going to say about voter qualifications in your state. No. But if you're south of those lines, well, damn right, you're either going to do what Congress wants in terms of disfranchising former Confederates and enfranchising blacks. It was all about controlling the state government. Shapiro did not challenge the academic viewpoint that the radical Republicans wanted to provide for racial equality in the southern states as a moral impulse. In reality, their motive was to ensure that their party would remain in power in Washington by creating Republican loyal puppet regimes in the South. Now, if you don't believe me, consider that the first radical Republican president, Ulysses Grant, was elected in 1868 with only a minority of white votes, notwithstanding that he was a popular war hero, and also notwithstanding that Congress had assumed the authority to prevent 3 of the southern states from voting at all in that election. In short, it was a rigged election. Thereafter, the Republicans manipulated the southern black vote until the GOP did not need them anymore, as new states that evolved from the Western territories entered the Union as Republican states. Every state that came into the Union between the beginning of the Civil War and 1907, when Oklahoma became a state, every single one, I think there were 12, every single one of them joined the Union with 2 Republican senators. That's why radical Reconstruction ended, because the Republican Party didn't need those vassal regimes after 1877. The great misfortune is that today's culture, to me, the great misfortune is that today's culture would not be so censorious if men like Shapiro had defended Confederate monuments 5 years ago, especially after he was greeted so warmly when he toured the South. He grew up in Chicago and California. He knows as much about the South as a pig does algebra, at least based upon those backgrounds. Now that he's traveled through the South, I'm disappointed that he can't see the goodness in the people there. But that's apparently something he can't do. Nonetheless, he gained nothing by throwing Confederate heritage or Confederate memory under the bus in a vain attempt to appease the so-called respectable media. I think he's doing a lot more of that now than he was 5 years ago. He claims that he doesn't care about respectable media, and he has often criticized them, no doubt, often criticizes them viciously. But now, once he got his radio show, he still wanted to be, considered, a level-headed critic of the left wing. And anything regarding the Confederacy doesn't fit that anymore. That's a big disappointment. Perhaps one reason why a growing number of Daily Wire subscribers tell Klavan and Knowles, and during Andrew Klavan and Michael Knowles, they have, I think once a week they have shows where you can email in your questions and they'll respond. But over the last 5 years, as I listened to those guys, increasingly I've heard people during the question and answer to Andrew Klavan and Michael Knowles say, I came to the Daily Wire for Shapiro, but stayed for you. There's just a sincerity that you get out of Klavan and Knowles that Shapiro is losing. He's losing it. He's certainly losing any gratitude for the Southerners that helped get the Daily Wire moving. Perhaps my greatest disappointment with, and now I add Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro, is to hear their pleas for financial support so that their audience can be assured that the donor voices can be heard, even though the Daily Wire and PragerU have repeatedly declined to give defenders of Confederate statues a chance to be heard. Perhaps, as Prager likes to explain, it's because courage is the rarest of virtues. Now, I know I've had some personal experience here. About 3.5 years ago, let me pull this down here. If I can get my camera, get a good look at my camera. About 3.5 years ago, Philip Lee, my book, Southern Reconstruction, I contacted the Daily Wire people, and I can't remember, the Forward Thought or something like that out in Los Angeles was their parent company. And I said, I'd like to send you all copies of my Southern Reconstruction book, because I was concerned then about, the way that the Southerners were being inaccurately portrayed by academic historians, and especially the attacks on the Confederate statues and Confederate symbols. So anyway, these people, they got back to me and said, yes, we'd like your book. Please send it. So I said, I would like to send it to Klavan, Knowles, and Shapiro. They said, yes, send us 3 copies. Well, I did. Never heard another thing. Nothing. So maybe the 3 copies I sent them ended up in the used book section of Amazon for sale. I don't know. But that did teach me one thing. I don't give books away anymore. People don't, this is one thing I agree with Prager on. People do not value what you give them for free. So I don't give books away anymore. And so I learned that lesson there with Daily Wire. But anyway, for you, what I'd like to do is I'd like to recommend that you get the copies of 1 or 2 of my books. Ulysses Grant's Failed Presidency will help you understand what I was talking about in terms of the radical Reconstruction. This book is $20 at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I'll sell you autographed copies at $25, and I will cover the postage. But you got to email me, Phil, PHIL _ Leigh, LEIGH, at me.com. Same thing with Southern Reconstruction at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. It's $22. I'll sell you copies with an autograph. And if you're in the United States or wrote these books, I will cover the postage, $25. Again, for the book, Southern Reconstruction, and I will cover the postage. Again, my email me, Phil, PHIL _ Leigh, LEIGH, at me.com. And we'll arrange for payment. Otherwise, you can get these books at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other fine bookstores. Okay, that's our show for today, and thank you for watching.